Namaste. Today's video is about assessment at the foundational stage of learning. Now, foundational literacy and numeracy skills have been given paramount importance in NEP 2020 as it has been identified as a core skill to future learning. Now, since foundational literacy and numeracy is so important, it is very important to track the learning of the children also from time to time, as we are following competency based teaching learning method at the foundational stage according to NEP 2020. This foundational literacy and numeracy has been given so much importance by the Ministry of Education that it is being followed as a mission that is known as a Nipun Bharat mission, so that every child is able to attain foundational literacy and numeracy. Now, in most of the classes, we see that children come from diverse backgrounds. Since they are coming from diverse backgrounds, it is very important to track their stage of learning, or what is the learning levels, or what are the needs of the children at the entry level, as they progress to the mid level, and also at the exit level. So that is actually very important. So the assessment has to be done. It should be a part of the teaching learning process. But then when the documentation comes, we try to document it at the entry level, at the mid level, and at the exit level from that particular class. Now, NEP 2020 Nipun Bharat mission also focuses on adaptive assessment for the learners. Now, what exactly is this adaptive assessment is? To assess the competencies of the children, there has been certain guiding principles for assessment. Certain guiding principles has been identified for the assessment at the foundational stages, and the points, that is the assessment in the foundational stage, can serve the following purposes. So the teachers actually need to first understand why this assessment is so important. So once we are very clear about why the assessment is important, we can bring about changes in our pedagogy. We can modify the content. We can even modify the way we approach different children, because they're all coming from diverse backgrounds, and each child should be considered as an individual, and the trajectory of learning has to be outlined by the teacher. Now, what are the assessment in the foundational stage can serve the following purposes. First is identify the needs, preferences, and interests of the child. This information can guide the teacher in the selection of content and pedagogical approaches, as I told already. Secondly, it can give the teacher insight into learning achievement of the child and guide the teacher on the future course of action. These responses give a window into the child's thinking and learning process. This is very important. Careful analysis of the child's responses is as much a task for the teacher as designing well thought of assessments. Now, the third guiding principle for assessment is allow consolidation of learning assessment tasks. When well-designed assessments are given, it consolidates the learning through meaningful activities and exercises. Next is make collaboration and coordination possible in efforts to provide appropriate learning opportunities for the child. That is, information gathered through the assessments can be shared with all stakeholders who have any interest in promoting learning of the child. For example, the parents or the school authorities or the community or anybody who is interested in the progress of the child, they can be given this information after assessing the child. Now it can also give a rate of progression over a period of time for each child. It is mentioned in NCFFS that it is not just the achievement of the learning outcomes or the achievement of the competencies that is important. It is also important at what time. That is, the time taken to achieve those competencies is also important. This gives an insight to the teacher or the stakeholders about the learning process that happens in the child. Now, it also gives an overall view of the learning achievements of the child in a classroom at an aggregate level. This helps a teacher in planning and organizing the content and pedagogy to achieve curricular goals for all children. Seventh point is, given the different socio-economic background of children and difference in the pace of learning, gaps in learning between children in the same class begin to emerge early. This is very important. The gaps in the learning between children emerge begin to emerge early and could get pronounced by grade 2, and if it is not addressed in good time. So it is so important. We have seen that after so many programs by the government, so many programs that has been taken up by the different institutions and schools too have different programs. In spite of all these efforts, we are not able to achieve foundational literacy and numeracy. So, and it has been identified in NCFFS that the actually, the learning gaps that are present, that doesn't allow the child to achieve the learning goals, it starts becoming prominent by the class 2. So what we have to do as educators is that we have to bridge this learning gap before the child gets into classroom. That is the foundational stage. Foundational stage, as we know, it is from age 3 to 8. So before the child completes class 2, if we are able to build this, bridge these learning gaps, then we become quite successful in seeing that the child achieves it later. The child then reads to learn and then learns to read. So that is the main idea of how about this foundational literacy and numeracy, and why assessments are so important. Now, the last and final point is about the guiding principles of assessment is that it gives early signals about possible developmental challenges. So the child is having any kind of issues in learning, then it can be addressed, because with these kind of assessments we are able to address, or we are able to understand that the child is facing certain learning difficulties, instead of just labeling the child as a slow learner, or labeling the child as this child is not able to learn. So we are specifically able to identify at what is the exact difficulty that the child is facing, and then we are able to, when we are able to identify the problem, then finding a solution to it is much easier. So that is about guidelines for the assessment at the foundation. These are the guidelines for the assessment at the foundational stage. Now, as per NCFFS, we are having a different domains of development, and we all know that NCF or NEP 2020 and NCFFS, all of these focus on the holistic development of the child. Now, the domains of development, like the physical development, the cognitive development, the language and literacy development, socio-emotional and ethical development, cultural development, all these have been subsumed into three developmental goals in Nipun Bharat. All these have been brought together and it has been consolidated and subsumed into three developmental goals. And our main intention is to achieve these developmental goals at the foundational stage as per as per the Nipun Bharat mission. And the developmental goal 1 is children maintain good health and well-being. Second developmental goal is children become effective communicators. Third developmental goal is that children become involved learners and connect with their immediate environment. Now, I think I have clearly explained the guidelines and why this assessment is so important. Now, coming to what are the techniques and tools that we use to assess the children in the class. Earlier, we used to have of course, we used to follow lots of methods, lots of techniques like class test and no summative assessment, all these kinds of things. But now NCFFS has clearly mentioned what are the tools and techniques that has to be followed for the development, for the assessment of the children at the foundational stage. So for ages starting from 3, 4, 5, we have observation of the child and then observing the artifacts that are prepared by the child. So observation is when the teaching learning process is going on in the class. So these two methods have to be followed. Essentially, we cannot give there should not be any formal test in classes 3, in Bal Vatika 1, 2 and 3. So many schools are all over the country are still following the practice of, giving tests and grades in Bal Vatikas or lower KG and upper KG as it is called. But that process is done away with now as per NEP 2020. There should not be any formal tests for the children of Bal Vatikas. So, but that doesn't mean that we don't assess the children. We have to assess the children, but not by giving them a formal test and putting pressure on the children. So the two methods that we we have to imply in Bal Vatikas is the observation of the child and then the artifacts that are prepared by the child and then assessing the children. Now we also assess the children by having this. I'm talking about this Bal Vatikas at the age of 3, 4, 5, Bal Vatika 1, Bal Vatika 2 and Bal Vatika 3. So no formal test for them. We have to observe the children and we have to preserve certain artifacts that are prepared by the children, and looking into that we have to assess the children and where are the learning gaps, and then try to form or try to modify our pedagogy or the teaching learning materials that we use inside the class. We also can assess the children with the help of portfolios and with the help of anecdotal records. Now, anecdotal records are something that that specific behavior of the child that we observe and then we note it down. And because all these activities, we are aiming at the overall development, the holistic development of the child. So all the domains, all the 5 domains, as I told already, they have been subsumed into 3 developmental goals. And we are focusing on these 3 developmental goals according to Nipun Bharat mission. So we have to look according to that and then we have to assess the child. Now, next thing that we can follow is to prepare a checklist. Checklist, mostly it is yes or no. So that is another way of assessing the child at the foundational stage. Then, of course, we prepare portfolios, and then we get the socio-economic background of the child from the parents, we understand the parents about the surroundings in which the child lives, and then we try to assess the child. So these are some of the methods that we follow that are to be followed at the foundational stage. No test or no formal test should be given to the children. Of course, we can give some work to the children in the form of worksheets, but we cannot assess the children, as earlier we used to do that. We used to grade them as A+, and we used to give them excellent, very good, poor. So that is done away with in the NCFFS. And now we have 4 levels, and the levels are beginner, progressing, proficient, and then advanced. So these 4 levels have to be given. When we are giving a grade, when we are assessing the child using the worksheets, we have to write progressing. These 4 levels only has to be written. We cannot write that excellent, outstanding, very good, good, or poor, and all those we should not use. So that is the way it should be. Okay. Now coming to how to analyze these assessments that we do in the class. Now a very good method for this actually is the rubric method that we follow. This rubric method actually, what is this rubric method of assessment? Rubric method of assessment, it is actually an assessment tool that clearly indicates the achievement criteria across all the components of any given student's work. For example, the writing competency. How do we assess the child with the help of a rubric is that thus writing itself, the competency of writing itself is clearly divided into 4 observable criteria. It has divided into 4 or we can call it as learning outcomes. It has to be, and then we see whether the child has achieved this, or all these levels have been achieved, or at the entry level, at the mid level, and also at the exit level. So if the child has not achieved it at the entry level, when the child enters, maybe due to various reasons, because children come from diverse backgrounds, they may have they may not have been well for some time, or due to different reasons they may not have achieved that learning outcomes at that entry level which were required to be achieved. So then what has to be done is that the teacher has to modify her pedagogy in such a way that the child achieves this learning outcome by the time he reaches the mid-level assessment. So that is the main idea behind the assessing the child with the help of the tool of rubrics. So many teachers still have a doubt, in fact, they do that kind of assessment, they do that rubric method of assessment, but they are not able to understand why exactly that rubric method of assessment is being followed. And it is just done as a routine work that that they do that they do, and it doesn't serve any purpose. So the rubric method of assessment, it's a very effective method of assessing the children. And the advantage of this rubric method is that it removes the subjectivity. The uh, any teacher, a teacher is, for example, a teacher is observing a child for a term, and then suddenly for some reason the teacher is not able to continue and another teacher comes in. So the way that teacher observes and assesses the child will be different. But in the case of a rubric method, if we use this tool of rubrics, what happens is that the learning outcomes is clearly mentioned in the rubric. So you have the teacher, whoever, the substitute teacher or the new teacher, whoever comes in, they have to just see the learning outcomes and then assess the child. So that becomes very easy. The subjectivity of the assessment is removed and it becomes very clear, and the child knows exactly, or the parent or whoever it is, they know exactly why the child is not able to reach that competency. For example, there is a parent teacher meeting, and the parent comes in and child is not able to write properly, or whatever, the child is not able to reach that competency properly, and simply if the teacher says that see, your child is not able to write, the parent is also not able to understand why, where is the problem with my child. The child may not be, that clarity of phonics may not be there. The child may not be able to hold the pencil properly, or the motor development has not been taken place, or what is the reason, what exactly is the reason that the child is not able to write properly, or sometimes there is some problem with the eyesight of the child. So when during the rubric method of assessment, all these problems are solved. So exactly we understand if it is differentiated into 3 or 4 criteria is given. For criteria of learning outcomes is given, whether the child has achieved the first one, whether the child has achieved the second one, whether the child has achieved the third one, whether the child has achieved the fourth one, and finally whether the child has achieved the competency. That becomes very clear to the teacher, and it also becomes clear to the parents. And sometimes in the case of children, when we tell them, it becomes very clear to the children as well. So children are also able to do the self-assessment and improve on themselves. So that is the beauty of the rubric method of assessment that we follow. So I think I have clearly told about different kinds of, this guidelines about it, and the tools and techniques that we use at the foundational stage, and then how to analyze this assessment that we do. And then finally we have to produce a report card, and CBSE mentions about holistic progress card, and here we take these 3 developmental goals, because all the domains of development have been subsumed into 3 developmental goals. That is the developmental goal that the children maintain good health and well-being, and they become effective communicators, and they become involved learners. So that can be included in the holistic progress report or the progress card. Now coming to class 1, these kinds of informal way of assessment is fine, but in my personal opinion, with my experience, I can say that when the child comes to class 2, it is better to have some kind of written kind of assessment to be given, pen and paper test as we call them. So it is better to give a pen and paper test at least by midterm and by the end of the term. Why? Because I'll tell you the reason why. Because according to NCF 2020, after the child completes class 2 and reaches class 3, there will be a test given by an outside agency to assess the learning of the child. So from my experience, what I have seen is that suddenly you are giving a pen and paper test to the child, kind of a formal test, to the child. It becomes slightly difficult for the child to understand. So in my personal opinion, I would say that it is okay to give all kinds of techniques, these observations, anecdotal records, and artifacts and all these. In Balvatikas, it is very good. Of course, we should not strain them, and we should not. Children should study in a happy environment, and it can be continued in class 1 also. But in class 2, it will be better to give them a pen and paper test, at least in the midterm and the mid-level and the exit level, so that when they come to class 3, they will be, and in outside agencies coming and assessing them, it will be easier for the children. So I hope this video will be useful to all the teachers out there who have some kind of difficulty in understanding the rubric method of assessment, and also the assessment of the children at the foundational stage. Thank you.